is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. My internet's still buffering. It'll figure itself out at some point. The drones are stealing all my juju here, but it is a nice little 10-game slate here. Some pretty decent contests today. There's a big 8-8-8 tomorrow because there's no NBA, but joining me in some retro Memphis Grizzly gear. What's going on, Cliffy?
Not a whole lot. I wasn't even a Vancouver Grizzlies fan. I kind of like the logo. I don't know. Anyways, interesting 10 games we have here tonight. There's one spot that looks like it's going to chew up quite a bit of the top two stack percentage. We're going to get to that right off the hop. But interesting matchups, like Montreal's at home against a Buffalo team that's really, really struggling. Speaking of struggling, we have the New York Rangers going into Nashville. That should be quite interesting. We have Washington coming off that loss last night, going into Chicago. Chicago seems to be playing better, but are they really? Another smash spot at the very end of the slate with Winnipeg going into San Jose. That feels like a flowchart special. We'll see how that goes. So there are a lot of intriguing matchups, some low totals. Aside from Tampa Bay, I don't think there's anything that really stands out as lopsided, like must play or anything like that. So I kind of like a slate like this.
Yeah, and Winnipeg obviously in a really good spot, but they're on the front end of a back-to-back, so I don't know. Like, they're in Anaheim tomorrow, too. So, like, two of the most ridiculous matchups on back-to-back slates. But you just kind of hope that if you do play them, they kind of show up. But let's talk about this slate. Let's get into it. My internet's still buffering, but it will figure itself out. Just wanted to say thank you guys for hanging out with us on this lovely Tuesday drone-filled afternoon. If you do want to go premium, you don't have to. But if you do, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That will get you 15% off any membership your first week or month. Let's get into this slate. Let's talk about the biggest total on the slate right off the hop. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.6 total. Heading into Tampa, the Lightning have a 3.8 total. Let's talk about that Tampa top line. Kucherov, Point, Gensel, 24,800. They have pretty much a 40% top two stack, which is absolutely outrageous for a 10-game slate. 20.5% projected ownership. Now, here is the key to this line, right? And I think we need to talk about it. We generally do talk about it. It's Jake Gensel. He has scored in, I think it's 6 or 7 straight games. Now, you take out the 2 games that Kucherov was out, that he had back-to-back shot bonuses. He's still averaging well under 3 shots a game. He's $7,400 tonight. This is one of the best power play spots on the night, however, so this would feel better if this was Colorado 1, a fully correlated Colorado 1. But Tampa 1 at their price, at that top two stack with positive leverage feels kind of crazy. I feel like leaving off Gensel and adding in like Hagel or something. But that's just like the second you do that, like Gensel's going to have a hat trick. So I think you just full stack Tampa here if you want to play them. You can add in Hagel if you want. Victor Hedman's back, but like it just gets unbelievably expensive if you add a fourth piece to that power play stack. And it's not like you're getting a supreme discount on Hagel anyway. So like I think if you play Tampa 1, you just kind of roll with it and hope that Gensel continues his hot streak and actually gets assists or something, because I think in his last 6 games he has 8 goals, 2 assists. So you kind of need him to have a multi-point night for it to be worth it. This is the spot to do it. So if you want to play Tampa, I think you just full stack the line. You don't try to get cute, and you go about your day. I have interest in Tampa too. I know you don't get a ton of power play correlation there. You get Hagel on power play 1, get Cirelli and Geeky on power play 2. But they'll avoid the Werenski pair for the most part. They're going to get secondary matchups on Columbus. They're coming in at 4.5% projected. They're only 15,100. And Hagel and Cirelli have been ridiculously good this season. Their sample with Connor Geeky is good. I don't mind dipping down to Tampa 2. I just worry that if Columbus gives Tampa Bay 4 or 5 power plays tonight, it's just going to be you need Tampa power play, right? So I'm leaning towards playing Tampa 1 here more than Tampa 2. I think Tampa 2 is fine. So, we'll have to see about that. But on the Columbus side, we don't really know the lines. I think they finished the last game Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli, Johnson, JVR. Now, if those are the lines, I don't mind that Columbus top line of Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov. They have been excellent this season. That top line, I mean, they will see Cirelli Hagel, which is a problem, but that would be fully correlated, and Tampa's penalty kill is nothing to be feared. I wouldn't prioritize them by any means, but if they happen to get into your 20 to 150 max, I wouldn't have an issue if you got to them. So Tampa 1, easily the best play in this game. It's just a matter of if you want to spend up. And if you do spend up, you really need Jake Gensel to get his multi-point game.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Gensel. He has 10 goals in his last 10 games, right? Like you talk about how much he's been scoring lately. 10 goals in 10 games, and he's averaging 17 DK points per game. Like, don't get me wrong, that's high. But on the full season, Nikita Kucherov is at 18. And I was just looking at other players, around the league. Like Austin Matthews is nearly at 17, and he has 10 goals in 22 games this year. Like your point about Gensel not shooting and not racking up assists and things like that is a pretty good one because, if he double dongs, then he's fine. But even like a goal and 3 shots, like it's just really not enough. Like he seems, he's definitely getting his chances. Obviously, it's just tough because you're paying, half your salary for those 3 players. Now, it is a very good matchup. Don't get me wrong. Like, Columbus over the last 31 days, 3.2 times shorthanded per game. The league average is like 2.8. Goalies have been bad. The penalty kill has been bad. Like, this is a very, very good matchup for Tampa 1 at home. I don't have problem using them. I can't say what I'm like. I haven't built my lineup. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Like, obviously, that Tampa line, they're at 4.6 goals per 60 this season. They've been like just superb. It is probably the best matchup on the board here tonight. So, like, I'm not going to say like don't play Tampa, but I have a problem. I just have a problem paying half my salary for a single line. Like, I'd be a lot more inclined to just one off Kucherov or something like that here tonight. But yeah, obviously, Tampa's the best line on the slate and possibly the best spot on the slate. So like, obviously no issue playing them. It's just a lot to pay. That's all. Your point about Tampa 2, I think is a good one. They're at 3.3 expected goals, 5.1 actual goals per 60 so far this season. Those numbers are actually better than the top line. It's just, they don't get the power play time. Like you said, it's only Hagel, whereas the top line is perfectly correlated. So I think Tampa 2 is firmly in play as well. Columbus is the more interesting side to me here. If it is Marchenko, Monahan, Voronkov, that's a perfectly correlated line as well. So far this season, their expected goals per 60 is 3.1, which is higher than the Tampa top line. Their actual goals per 60 is 5.4, which is also higher than the Tampa top line. They just don't have the same power play to boast, and Tampa obviously doesn't take as many penalties, has a better penalty kill. It's not nearly as good of a power play spot for Columbus, but again, nobody is playing the Blue Jackets here tonight. 2.3% ownership. If that is indeed the top line, like obviously, like I said, Tampa 1 is the best line on the slate and in the best spot on the board, but it's still half your salary. Whereas that Columbus line is 15,600. They're a nice mid-price line here tonight. It's not like Tampa's been an exceptional defensive team or anything like that this year. Like their goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 so far this season is outside the top 10 of the league. Like it's not, this isn't going in and facing like Minnesota or Los Angeles or something like that. So yes, obviously Tampa 1 firmly in play. I think I kind of like Columbus 1 here tonight, especially if you're playing 20 lineups or something like that. Like I would definitely give this Columbus top line a look. They don't need a ton to pay off their 15,600. So I think, obviously both top lines are firmly in play. I think I might be a little bit more interested in the Columbus side here.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not spending up for Tampa 1, I think I'd rather play Columbus 1 than Tampa 2 just because no one's playing them. But yeah, you really like if you're playing single entry tonight, you're going to have to make a choice whether you want to play Tampa or not. And that will kind of hinge on your night. You know what I mean? Los Angeles Kings with a 3 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 2.6. This is a brutal matchup for Pittsburgh. I am pretty much out on them in single entry. If you happen to get to Malkin Bunting Tomasino in your 150 max as a filler, sure. Like Bunting one-off is fine because he shoots the puck a lot. I don't particularly love Pittsburgh 1 here. It's just a miserable matchup. Kings are still the lowest 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60 in the league. So I'm pretty much out on Pittsburgh here. The interesting thing is what to do with the Kings because they have 3 playable lines at 3 different price points. So the one coming in with the most ownership is Fiala-Laferriere-Danault. They're 13,500, 4.4% top 2 stack, 10.9% projected ownership. I think they're fine. Don't get me wrong. I like them. And I think if you aren't spending up for Tampa, because I don't think 13.5 would fit with that Tampa line unless you really got spicy with your defensemen and goalies, I think they're fine. Like if you're playing like a $19,000 or $20,000 line as a filler, that ownership is a bit high. I think the interesting line to me is Kempe Kopitar Turcotte, 15,000 even, 4.6% top 2 stack, 5.9% projected ownership. Interestingly enough, like Kempe and Kopitar have had a pretty good season, but without Alex Turcotte, they only have a 49% expected goal share. With Turcotte, it's 60%. Like he makes that line better. And this is a really good matchup going up against the Pittsburgh top line, who at best trades chances. So I think my favorite Kings line would be Kempe Kopitar Turcotte. Obviously, Fiala-Laferriere-Danault is fine. If you are going for Tampa 1, I think Fogle, Byfield, Janot, at least 2 of them, that is something that you can put with Tampa 1. They are coming in, almost 10x their top 2 stack. But again, when you get a line like that in a matchup under 10K, they're going to be wildly overowned. So I'm fine with a couple of those guys if you're going up for Tampa. But my favorite line in this game is Kempe Kopitar Turcotte.
Yeah, just for posterity, you can't fit the Fiala-Danault line with Tampa. Even with the cheapest goalie, you don't have enough here defensemen. So it would have to be the Fogle line if you do decide to play them with Tampa. I'm wondering why it took so long to get back to Alex Turcotte on the top line, because that top line, like they were pretty good. Like when they played a handful of games together earlier in the season, then they just broke them up.
Trevor Moore getting hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Never put them back together until now. About 80 minutes with Turcotte, 3.1 expected goals, 4.7 actual goals, riding pretty hot by shooting percentage, but still generating pretty good quality for a Kings team that usually really doesn't generate a lot of good quality. So that Kempe Kopitar Turcotte line, 15K, like if you aren't paying up for Tampa, basically they fit with just about everybody else. They do still get good minutes. They 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. Even Turcotte has slid onto the second unit. So they all get some power play time. Probably see a fair amount of that Crosby line, which has been pretty poor defensively. 3 expected goals against per 60. Now, they've been a little bit better of late, but I don't want to throw away the whole season sample for a good 6 or 7 games or whatever. So, yeah, I really do like Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte here. That Fiala-Laferriere-Danault line is a little interesting to me just because they are cheaper. You can fit them in easier with something like, Winnipeg or whatever. If you are playing or an expensive Carolina, something like that. They have also been really, really good together this season. 3.2 expected goals for, 3.6 actual goals for. And Fiala's playing both halves of the power play, and the Pittsburgh penalty kill after a good start this season has been on a pretty steady slide for about the last 5-6 weeks. So not a bad power play spot for the Kings here. For me, I would probably go to either of the top 2 lines. I agree with you. I think Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte is my favorite line. They're also more expensive, so it depends what you want to do with the rest of your lineup. But Kings 1 and Kings 2 is what I really have interest in from this game. Probably Kings 1, the Kopitar line, more than anything.
Buffalo Sabres with a 3.1 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.9 total. I want to look to see what Buffalo lines were. Are these accurate? Because I think they finished their last game something different. We have Thompson, Tuck, Benson, Cousins, Peterka, Quinn. Didn't Tage Thompson play a bunch with Yuri Kulik in the last game? Or am I just making that up?
Not a bunch.
They didn't play.
Yeah, he played the final couple shifts with them.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, so maybe they just go back to Thompson, Tuck, Benson, Cousins, Peterka, Quinn. Rasmus Dahlin out, Jordan Greenway out. So I'm fine with Thompson, Tuck, Benson at 18-2. 7.6% top 2 stack, 4.9% projected ownership. They're kind of in a weird range where they're a little bit cheaper than Winnipeg. You know what I mean? They're right around what Nashville 1 is. You have Ottawa 1, New Jersey 2, Carolina 2 in that price range. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I'm going to prioritize them. It is a good matchup. So at that ownership with positive leverage, I don't mind it in single entry. I don't know if me personally I'll get there, but you can definitely make a case for them in single entry. I don't have an issue with it. So obviously in MME, they're fine. Buffalo 2, I don't know, man. These 3 guys have been in and out of Lindy Ruff's doghouse. I know they're 12-5, but they're coming in at 6%, higher than the top line. They have a better 5-on-5 matchup, but if they fall behind in this game, I have no faith that these 3 guys are going to be on the same line together come the second period. So really, it would be the top line for me. I don't mind the Ryan McLeod line as a filler, but if you worry that the Cousins line is going to get broken up, they're going to be shuffling with those guys. So it really would be Buffalo 1 for me or bust. On the Montreal side, that Montreal top line's a little bit expensive at 17,100. Slavkovsky hasn't been great. Their sample's still decent, so let's not pretend Buffalo is a great team here. They're fully correlated. Buffalo's penalty kill hasn't been great. I don't mind taking a stab on them. I'd be more likely to one-off Patrick Laine or something than full-on stack Montreal 1 here. In MME, if you're playing 20 or 150, I'm more likely to get to some Montreal 1 here. In single entry, I think I'd prefer just to find the 1100 and go play Buffalo 1. Fine with a Laine one-off, but I don't particularly love Montreal in this matchup, despite it being an actually decent matchup.
Yeah, I think I prefer the Buffalo side here. I actually don't mind that Cousins, Peterka, Quinn line. You're right. At different times this season, they've all been Lindy Ruff's doghouse. I'm going to be honest. how many guys in the top 6 haven't been in his doghouse this season? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
That's true.
like they threatened to move. Yeah, they threatened to move Tage Thompson. Like it's basically just Alex Tuck, I guess. Like Cousins, Quinn, and Peterka a couple of years ago were a pretty good second scoring line for the team, and that was with Peterka and Quinn as rookies. Now, obviously, Cousins has struggled this year. Quinn has struggled a bit this year. They've generated a lot of shot attempts, not necessarily a lot of quality. Montreal's one of those teams that does give up a lot of quality, though. You know what I mean? Like a couple shows ago, we mentioned how Montreal gives up a lot around the net. They let guys get to the net pretty easily. Like just watch any Montreal game, you'll see how easy their defensemen lose track of players in and around the slot. And that, that Buffalo second line, like, Peterka, 2 out of the 3 guys on that line were on the top power play unit last game. Now, whether that stays this game, I think is a fair question, but they did score. So like you get 2 guys on the power play. Montreal's taken a ton of penalties. It's a $12,500 filler line. Like I kind of like Buffalo and like Montreal's second line, like that Doc Line line has been abysmal at 5-on-5 since Line showed up. It hasn't mattered if it's Newhook or Slafkovsky on the wing. Like they've just been terrible. I think it's a fine matchup for Buffalo too, especially where you get a couple guys on the power play. So I kind of like Cousins, Peterka, and Quinn here. That's what I like from the Buffalo side. On the Montreal side, it would probably be the top line, just because I don't have any faith in Laine, Doc, and Newhook actually being a good line, because Laine and Doc just have not played well together. I don't think I'm going to be dipping down to Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like process of elimination. It would be the Montreal top line. But I think it's Buffalo too that I like best in this game. They're a nice filler that you can put with Carolina, that you can put with Winnipeg, that you can put with, if you're playing Pittsburgh top line, you can put them with them. There's a lot of like Ottawa, New Jersey. There's a lot of like $18,000, $19,000 stacks where this $12,500 line would fit in pretty well with them. So I kind of like Buffalo 2 here. Montreal 1 for me on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I like Montreal 1. It's just they're just in a weird price range that I don't particularly love. New York Islanders with a 2.4 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.5. Carolina mixing up their lines again at morning skate. They're going Aho, Jarvis, Eric Robinson, Netchis, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Martinook, Stahl, Carrier, Roslovic, Blake, Yost. Islanders, we don't know because they said Horvat's a game-time decision and Anthony Duclair is out. I would assume Nelson Palmieri are together. That's about as safe as you can get. This is a brutal, brutal matchup, especially with Pyotr Kochetkov back. I'm pretty much out on the Islanders. I'll save some time there. The Carolina side is a little bit more interesting here. Now, Eric Robinson did play up on that top line for a game not too long ago. He scored. I don't mind that line at 17K. Like, I'd rather play Aho, Jarvis, Robinson at 17K than the Montreal top line at 17-1, 4.8% top 2 stack, 4.3% projected ownership. I'm completely fine with that. The Netchis, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi line is $1,600 more expensive. They have an 8% top 2 stack, but like, I just don't want to play Kotkaniemi. Like, he'll maybe play 14 minutes and probably won't do much with his time. I would just go to Aho, Jarvis, Robinson here if you want to leave off Robinson and add in a Svechnikov. Like, that's fine, but like, the Islanders just don't take penalties, so it's more of a 5-on-5 type deal. And for me, that would be Aho, Jarvis, Robinson. Again, like, I'm fine with Netchis, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi. I just, like, if it was any other center, like if they put, like, I don't even know, just anyone but Kotkaniemi, I'd have more interest. So I'm going to go Aho, Jarvis, Robinson.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that the Islanders have this specific matchup, because I would actually have some interest in a Lee Horvat Barzal line. Like they've actually been pretty good offensively over the last couple of years, like 3.5 goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Problem is like this is one of the worst matchups in the NHL. Is like going into Carolina as a top line. So yeah, I'm out on the Islanders. For me, it's the Aho Jarvis line. I don't have like Andrei Svechnikov has basically been moved around all 4 lines for like 3 weeks now. Like there are times he's been on the 4th line, he's been on the 3rd line, he's been on the top line. Like they're trying to get him going or trying to get him right or whatever. I don't have a lot of faith that they stay together. At the very least, I'm pretty sure Aho and Jarvis are going to stay together. And Aho and Jarvis better together offensively than they've been apart basically since Jarvis got there. Certainly over the last couple seasons. If you want to look at just since the start of last season, with Jarvis and Aho on the ice at 5-on-5, 3.4 expected or 3.4 actual goals for per 60. When Aho doesn't have Jarvis, that falls to 2.7. So, creates about 25% more goals when he has Jarvis next to him. So I kind of like that matchup. Aho, Jarvis, and Robinson. Robinson is cheap enough where I don't mind slamming him in because, again, he's just one of those guys where all you need is an assist and a couple shots, and you'll probably be fine with that. So, Jarvis is cheaper than both Necas and Svechnikov. Aho isn't super expensive. Like 7,400 is expensive for him, but it's not brutally expensive. Like it's only a 17K line. I think it's Carolina 1. I like best in this game. I wasn't really in on Carolina, and then I see that their goal total has gone up quite a bit since this morning. So it seems like maybe somebody else knows something that I don't necessarily do. But I do like Carolina 1 here. They're certainly in my mix. I don't know if I'm going to play them, but if I play anything from Carolina, it's going to be that line. Jarvis and Aho have just played too well together, and I don't have a ton of faith that Svechnikov stays on that second line the whole game.
New Jersey Devils with a 3.1 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.4. Be quick on the Blues if you happen to get to Thomas Buchnevich neighbors in like 20 to 150 in a couple of your MME mix. They're fine. Otherwise, I'm out on them in single entry. It's a brutal matchup going up against the Devils. The Devils side is a little more interesting, but Mercer is still up on the line with Hischier and Meyer. So I don't particularly love them, and they're coming in higher projected owned than the Hughes Bratt Palat line, which is the line I prefer anyway. They are 19-7, so obviously if you aren't playing Tampa, they're one of the more expensive lines on the night that you can choose from. You're coming in at 3.2% projected ownership. Like the Blues, like that Blues top line, whatever, is fine defensively, but this team is old and slow. I like Hughes, Bratt, Palat here. They're the Blues penalty kill isn't very good. They don't take a ton of penalties, but the Devils can easily capitalize on a couple power plays here. It would be Hughes, Bratt, Palat for me.
So this isn't a good matchup for St. Louis, but I thought this matchup seemed familiar. A couple weeks ago, St. Louis went into New Jersey and beat New Jersey 3-0. Now, New Jersey outshot them 32-20, so take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But, that St. Louis top line has been pretty good together this season. 3.4 expected goals, 6.5 actual goals per 60. Obviously, they're riding hot. But even if they were only shooting like 9.5%, they would still be, like 30% better than the league average by goal scoring at 5-on-5. And they're not that expensive. Like, they're basically a filler stack at 14,400. The thing is like, if I'm going to play a line in that 14 to 16K range, like the Kings top line is an even 15K. You mentioned Tampa 2 earlier. They're 15,100. Columbus 1 is 15,600. We'll get to Washington in a second. Washington's also under 16K. Like, you compare two of those lines together, and then maybe you get to St. Louis. But if I'm only taking one of those lines in that 14 to 16K range, it's probably not St. Louis, not in a single entry. If I was 20 maxing, I think that'd be a different story. I honestly don't mind the St. Louis top line here. But again, just given the other lines that are in that price range, whether it be Washington, Columbus, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, I think there are just other spots I would go to if I was using one line in that price range. So I'd be more interested in the New Jersey side. I'd be interested in that Jack Hughes line again until they move Dawson Mercer up. Like the thing is like it seems like once a season, Dawson Mercer goes on like a 12-game streak where he'll have like 7 goals and 8 assists or something like that, and then do almost next to nothing the rest of the time. And I worry that eventually he's going to hit that if he keeps playing with Nico Hischier. I'm not going to be playing them at that price. I'd much rather play Hughes, Bratt, and Palat. They've started scoring a lot more after going through like a month-long cold stretch. They're up to 3.6 goals per 60 at 5-on-5 this season. Not worried about any of the matchups coming from the St. Louis side, even the Robert Thomas line. You mentioned that St. Louis Blues defense. Like, you're looking at Ryan Suter, Cam Fowler, Justin Falk. Like, it's like, come on, man. There's just not a whole lot there. Like, Colton Parayko's pretty good, but other than that, like, there's really not a lot that I'm worried about. The only thing I'd be worried about, as you mentioned, is that St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties. 2.4 times shorthanded per game over the last 31 days. League average is about 2.8. They're a lot better than that. So maybe New Jersey only gets a couple power plays. That might be a little bit of a problem, but that Hughes line has been really good. They finally started to score 2 out of the 3 on the power play. You know, I think you can take off Palat and put on Nason, but it's a $1,500 difference, and Palat can still get there sometimes. So I'd probably just leave Palat in. My favorite line in this game is New Jersey 1, but I don't want to just throw away St. Louis. I do think that top line is good enough, especially at home against a good defensive New Jersey team, but not an elite defensive New Jersey team. They're not like a Minnesota or Los Angeles or something like that.
Yeah. New York Rangers with a 2.8 total. Heading into Nashville, the Predators have a 3.1. Nashville going Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Nyquist, my boy Zachary L''H, and then Novak, Evangelista, Jankowski. Rangers going with Panarin out. They're going Hedl, Cooley, Lafreniere, Kako, Zibanejad, Riley Smith, Brett Berard, Trocheck, Kreider. The bigger news for the Rangers is they finally broke up Fox and fucking Lindgren. Like, Adam Fox is an all-star with anyone but Ryan Lindgren. I can't even say his name. Ryan Lindgren is with Braden Schneider. And if Ryan Lindgren has to play, I think Braden Schneider would be the guy because Braden Schneider and Jacob Trouba played well together. The third pair is Urho Vakanainen and Chad Rudewell. And those guys won't blow you away at all offensively, but they will be a decent defensively sound pair. So, like, they are at least trying to get better defensively here. So, Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, $18,000 even, 15.5% top 2 stack, 18.7% ownership. Like, I know Igor, but as my internet buffers in and out, I know Igor hasn't been great, but Lavalette hasn't done anything to help the defense in front of him. This is the first time that he's moving Ryan Lindgren. So I am out on Nashville 1. If you want to play them at 18,000, be my guest. I don't have any interest. I would have a little interest in Novak Evangelista if you are trying to power play stack Tampa. That's really about it. Like, Nashville 1's fine. Just at that ownership, I do not want to play chalk Nashville against a Rangers team that is at least making changes to be better. It could work. It might not work. I don't know. On the Rangers side, I do have interest in Lafreniere, Cooley, Hedl. I think they will play well together. Argument could be made that Hedl is their best center already. Whether that is true or not remains to be seen, but I like the makeup of that line. Will Cooley has been the best Rangers forward pretty much the past few weeks. 14,100 against a slow Nashville team. Sign me up for Lafreniere, Cooley, Hedel. I don't mind Trocheck, Kreider, Berard, but I would defer to Hedel, Cooley, Lafreniere.
So I understand why Nashville has all that ownership. I also don't. Like, I don't get me wrong. I get it. The Rangers haven't been a good team for like at least a month now. Nashville is literally the lowest scoring team in the league, right? Like this team's
awful.
dead. This team's dead last in goals per minute, both at all strengths and at 5-on-5. I'm not playing a 21% line on the worst offensive team in hockey. No, it's just, I'm sorry. It just, that feels ridiculous. I feel like I say this once a show. Like, if this line burns me, that sucks. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll research tomorrow's slate and I'll play tomorrow night's DFS slate. I'm not playing the lowest scoring team in the NHL 2.5 months into the season as one of the, if not the chalkiest spot on a 10-game slate. It's just a hard pass for me. I just can't see it. For me, it is about the Rangers. I would also go to Lafreniere and Hedel, just because I'm gonna be honest. I have no faith in Mika Zibanejad. I'm not entirely sure about Kreider and Trocheck together either, given like neither's really been a standout player so far this season. Like, with Panarin out, I think the most impressive player that the Rangers have left in their forward group, just thinking of how they played this season, is probably Hedel. Might even be Lafreniere. Like, you could probably make an argument that with Panarin out, that the three Rangers that have played the best for the majority of the season this year are all on the same line, with Lafreniere and Cooley and Hedel. Now, it's split power play. Lafreniere's on the top power play unit. The others are not. Nashville still tends to have a good penalty kill, and I also worry about the Rangers' power play in general without Panarin. Like, Lafreniere can't replace that, and they don't have anybody else that can replace him. So, like, I'm wondering if it's really super valuable anyway to have that power play correlation. For me, it's just a $14,100 line that I think is perfectly fine to play here tonight. Again, though, they're in that price range that we just talked about with New Jersey and St. Louis, right? Like, that St. Louis line is 14,400. If I'm only playing one line in that price range, again, you have Los Angeles, you have Tampa Bay, you have Columbus, you have Washington. Like, I think there are just other spots I would rather go to. I would rather play the Rangers than the Predators here tonight by a lot, by a wide margin. I'm not sure I even want to play the Rangers here tonight. But if I do, it'd be Lafreniere and Hedel. They've probably been the most impressive players. Obviously, we don't have a sample with them so far this season. They did play well together in prior seasons when they're down on the third line. This is obviously a cow of a different color, but I would go Lafreniere and Hedel, but I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot that really excites me in this game.
Yeah, I'm certainly not playing Nashville one. Washington Capitals. I got confused there for a second. I almost said the Nationals. With a 3.4 total heading into Chicago, the Blackhawks have a 2.5 total. Taylor Hall is a game-time decision tonight. As it stands, Chicago is going Bedard, Donato, Foligno, Hall, Bertuzzi, Nazar, Teravainen, Dickinson, Mikheyev. Now, if Hall is out, I think it was Kurashev who took the spot. Yeah. So Washington played last night. They lost. I don't think they mixed up their lines. So they're going to run back Strome, McMichael, Radish, Wilson, Dubois, Protas. As far as we know, if you are interested in playing Washington, be in the Discord or check Twitter for the Washington lines. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like Nick Foligno being on the top line for Chicago gives me interest in that line. Like, as long as Philip Kurashev isn't there, like I will have interest in the Bedard line. Like Bedard's numbers with Kurashev are atrocious. Bedard's numbers with Foligno are actually good. I think Donato fits well on that line. They're coming in at 1.3% projected. Now they're in that price range that Cliffy just talked about. They're 14,900. I think if push comes to shove, I'd rather go play the Kings top line. But I don't mind the Bedard, Donato, Foligno line. I don't particularly love the second line, whether it's Hall or Kurashev. The one thing I will say is they are very, very cheap. And Frank Nazar is on the top power play unit at min price, and he's not some just random guy, right? He's a very good prospect. He's pretty green, but at min price in a decent power play matchup, whether Chicago has anything decent on the power play to offer is another question. But I think Nazar can help. He is min price and on that top power play, so I don't mind a Frank Nazar one-off here. That second line, whether it's Hall or Kurashev, I prefer Hall at 10,100 is fine as a filler if you're using Tampa Bay. Like that's the only way I'd full stack that line is if I'm doing something with Tampa Bay. Would be Chicago one for me. On the Washington side, I don't know if I'd full stack anything. If I was, it would be Strome, McMichael, Radish. They have been good this season. Again, they're also in that price range at 15.8. I think I'd rather go play the Kings top line in single entry. Maybe I'd prefer Columbus one. You know what I mean? I'm fine with Washington. Don't love them back to back on the road. It is a pretty good matchup, but I'm fine with Washington one. I'm fine with Chicago one. Frank Nazar one off is in play if you need a cheap guy. I just, I don't think I'll be prioritizing anything in this game in single entry.
Yeah. Nick Foligno playing on the top line with Connor Bedard since the start of last year, 2.4 goals per 60. Bedard without Foligno on the ice, 1.9 goals per 60. It's actually ridiculous. The goal scoring goes up like 27% or something like that. The thing is like it only goes up to about league average. That's the thing. Is like Connor Bedard has been league average with Nick Foligno and just considerably worse without him. That's one of the reasons why we might be interested here is because they legitimately have had better offensive numbers together over the last couple of years. Same thing with if you look at just this year alone 2.5 expected goals for per 60 with Donato, or 2.6 expected goals for with Foligno and Bedard on the ice, 2.5 actual goals per 60. So league average it sounds like a slap in the face, but it's actually a pretty big step up for just about any Chicago line. So I don't mind Chicago one here, but like you mentioned, there are a bunch of lines in that 14 to 16K range. I would pair Chicago with another line, but again, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, Washington, that I'll talk about in a sec. Like those are just lines that I would rather place. And so I think Washington one is fine. You mentioned Frank Nazar on the top power play. Tyler Bertuzzi is as well. So like you're probably going to get 2 out of 3 guys on that second line on the top power play. Not like their power play's really been any good. It's been about average, which honestly feels like a miracle given how poor the team is, generally speaking, offensively. But I have a lot more interest in the Washington side here. Strome and McMichael so far this season, 3.9 expected goals per 60. Now, not a lot in actual goal scoring, but, shooting percentage like 7%, whereas McMichael's typically been like 10, 11%, if not much higher at times when playing with Dubois and Wilson. So against the Chicago defense that still missing Seth Jones, has definitely struggled at times in front of Soderblom. I like Strome, McMichael, and Radish. They are one of those lines in that mid-price range that I really do like here tonight. I think you can take out Radish and put in Wilson if you want, but Radish is only 2,700. He's another one of those guys where he doesn't need a lot to pay off. So I think I'd probably just full stack. I like Washington one here. I like the Strome, McMichael, Radish line. I'm not worried about the matchups. too much coming back from the Chicago side. But I also think now that Bedard's finally rid of Kurashev, that he's back to being regularly playable. And I do have some interest in Chicago one, but push come to shove, I'd much rather play Washington here.
Yep. Boston Bruins with a 2.9 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 2.6. Like, there's so much ownership on Calgary again. Like, I don't get it, man. Like, Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil, 12,100, almost 10% projected. Back on Coleman, Coronado, almost 7% projected. Like, I get it because they're so cheap. Like, the Kadri line's 12,100. The back on line's 10,600. I know Boston struggled defensively early in the season, but, like, they are much better defensively now. None of these Calgary lines will blow you away offensively. I guess if push came to shove, I would go play the Kadri line. I just don't want to play them at almost 10% with a 2.6 total. You know what I mean? I'll go find something else. Like I know the Kings second line, the LaFerriere line is even more high owned, but like they are so much better offensively in a much better matchup. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to play a line around 10% around that price, it's going to be the Kings than the Flames. Back on Coleman Coronado at 10.6 at 7% projected. Like, I don't love the ownership there, but like at that price, they fit with Tampa and those lines are at a premium. So I get why that ownership is so high. I just don't love the matchup here. So I don't think I'll be playing them in single entry. If you happen to get to them in MME, do what you need to do there. The Boston side's a little bit more interesting. Like, Pastrnak has started shooting the puck more. I know he only had one shot on goal the last game in his 4-point game. Like, it's just weird, but they're under 17K, 8.2% top two stack, 9% projected ownership. I don't mind them at that price. Am I going to prioritize them? Probably not. But I don't mind a Pastrnak line in a decent matchup at 17K. Like Marchand, Lindholm, Brazeau, they've been decent together at 14-2, but at that point, I'm just going to go find the couple $100 to go play the Kings, go play the Capitals, you know what I mean? So it would be Boston 1 for me. Calgary's fine. I just don't like the ownership.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd probably play the Kadri line here. They've actually been good this year. It's not a big sample yet, only 80 minutes together about there. Huberdeau, Pospisil, and Kadri, but 3.3 expected goals per 60, 75 shot attempts per 60. Like, Calgary's typically a team that has had trouble generating quality. This line hasn't. Like, that's the one thing that they've actually been able to do. It is quite a bit of ownership. Like, Boston has been better defensively. The goaltending hasn't, which is kind of the thing here. It's like we're still kind of waiting for Jeremy Swayman to not suck, if you know what I mean. Like, I know he only gave up one goal against Vancouver the other night, so like congrats on that. But if you look at his 10 games before that, I think it was 34 goals against in his 10 games before that. So like, not going to throw everything out just because of one game. I wouldn't even do that for 10 games, but like, he's just been struggling basically all season, regardless of how good Boston's been defensively in front of him. So I don't mind the Kadri line if you really do need a filler. Kind of agree with you. I just think that there are other filler spots that I would kind of rather go to. Like, I think I'd rather play Buffalo here tonight going into Montreal than I would rather play Calgary going up against Boston. We'll get to see, there's Seattle in the late game that we'll talk about that definitely has some lines that you can play. So, that Kings Fiala line you mentioned about a little bit higher ownership, but not too much different. I'd much rather play the Kings. So I think they're fine. There's just other spots that I would personally rather go to. On the Boston side, what worries me about the Pastrnak line is that they're going to see a whole lot of Backlund and Coleman. And Backlund and Coleman have just been really, really good defensively this season, almost regardless of the winger. But, even with Coronado, 2.2 expected goals against per 60. Boston power play has been better lately, has generally not been good this year. But the Flames have been taking a lot of penalties, 3.2 times shorthanded over the last 31 days. It's amongst the most in the league. So Boston might get 3-4 power play opportunities here tonight. And with the way that the Flames have struggled at times on the PK, Boston, even if their power play is struggling, could definitely pop one here tonight. I think I would lean to, I can't believe I'm saying I'd play the Lindholm line, but I think I would lean Marchand, Lindholm, and Brazeau. 2.9 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 and 145 minutes together. They're not going to see the backline line. They get the softer matchups. You still get two guys on the top power play unit. So I think I would go to the Marchand line. If you want to take out Brazeau and put in Pasternak to make it more of a power play stack, like I honestly have no problem with that. Obviously, it'd be way more expensive. You're looking at a line that would be around 20K, but that's probably what I would do here. I have more interest in Boston than I do in Calgary. I don't have a ton of interest in either side here tonight, though.
Yep. Ottawa with a 2.8 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.6. Ottawa running back Kachuk, Batherson, Norris, Stützle, Giroux, Gaudette. Seattle running McCann, Stevenson, Burakovsky, Beniers, Schwartz, Tanev, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, Wright. I don't have a ton of interest in Seattle here. I know all their lines are super cheap. If it would be anything, I'm going right back to Wright, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, 9,500, 1.1% projected ownership. They have been good. I don't want to play a Stevenson line. Beniers has had a terrible season, and he hasn't, he has Jaden Schwartz and Tanev. I don't particularly love that line, so it would be Seattle 3 for me. The Ottawa side, it would be the top line or bust. Now, they're 19,900. They're in that range with, Devils 1 and Winnipeg 1. I think, obviously, Winnipeg 1's in a much better spot here. Seattle has gone away from Stevenson taking top comp at home. Now, the Beniers, Schwartz, Tanev line in the small sample hasn't been great, but they certainly haven't been as bad as the Stevenson line. I don't mind Ottawa 1 here. I don't think I'd prioritize them in single entry. They are fully correlated. Seattle doesn't have a very good penalty kill. So, if you're not playing Tampa, I would throw them in the mix with New Jersey, Hughes line, and Winnipeg 1 as spend-up options. They have positive leverage, but that's really about it in this game. Ottawa 1, Seattle 3.
The problem with me for the Ottawa side is Seattle doesn't have a very good penalty kill. They're also by far the least penalized team in the league over the last 6 weeks. And I was looking just over the last 31 days, over the last 5 weeks, they're basically at 1.6 times shorthanded per game. The league average is 2.8. They are just not taking any penalties. So Ottawa might only get 1 or 2 power plays here tonight, and they're very power play reliant for their production. That's the one thing that concerns me is you almost certainly need at least 1 power play goal from them for that line to pay off, so that they can get there the rest of the way at 5-on-5 or with the empty net or whatever. So I'm probably out on Ottawa. Honestly, if I was going to play a low owned line in that price range, the New Jersey line is under 5% owned, projected ownership. I would probably rather just go do that. Buffalo top line under 4% projected ownership. I'd probably rather just do that. Carolina top line under 5%. There are just a lot of spots in that 17 to 20K range that are under 5% projected ownership that I think I would rather play here tonight. So I think I have more interest in the Seattle side. I agree with you. I would go back to Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, right? Because they do fit in with Tampa Bay. They're only 9,500. They've still been playing well. Bjorkstrand's still in the top power play unit. And the top power play for Seattle's actually been good. Wright and Bjorkstrand have certainly been playing well together. If you want to go to Stevenson and McCann because you get more power play correlation, I think that's fine. I would definitely just full stack, and they are a stack that you can play with Tampa as well. But I think I agree with you. I'd probably go back to the Shane Wright line. I just think they've been playing well. The Ottawa depth has really not been good. I think it's just pretty good matchups for that Seattle third line. So for me, it'd be the right line. I think the Stevenson line is also fine if you want more power play correlation. But for me, it's Tolvanen, Wright, and Bjorkstrand.
Me too. Winnipeg Jets, 3.4 total. Heading into San Jose, Los Tiburones de San Jose tienen un 2.5 total. That's my Spanish for the day. Winnipeg going Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Perfidi, Nemestikov, Chibrikov. San Jose going Goodrow, Granlund, Zetterlund, Kovalenko, Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, Wenberg, Smith. So on that Granlund line, only Granlund's on the top power play. On the Celebrini line, you get Celebrini and Toffoli on the top power play. I haven't seen if Winnipeg confirmed Hellebuck or not.
They said he was going through his normal starting routine, so it looks like it's going to be Hellebuck.
Bummer, because I would have had a little bit of interest in Celebrini, Toffoli, Kovalenko at 13-1. But if it's going to be Hellebuck tonight and then him sitting tomorrow against the Ducks, I don't particularly love this matchup for the Sharks. Like, if you get to Celebrini, Toffoli, Kovalenko in your MME mix at that price, it's fine. Like, in single entry, it's hard to do against Hellebuck. This is a Winnipeg 1 game. And, you know, the flow chart has been flow charting recently. They are 20,200 with a 16.1% top 2 stack. Only 10.9% projected ownership because Tampa is soaking up so much ownership in that price range. The flow chart says if they're in a good matchup, you fade them. However, they are fully correlated. They are fairly power play reliant, and this is arguably the best power play spot in the night. You can argue Tampa's in just as good a one, if not better. But if Tampa's in the number 1 spot, Winnipeg is certainly not far behind in the 2 spot. I do really like Winnipeg 1 here. Fully correlated. Like, they're not great 5-on-5, but there's nothing coming back at them from the San Jose side that makes you worried. I think that's the only line I would use. Like, if you want to use Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton as a filler, like, that's fine. Like, I know Perfitti's on the top power play unit, but he still might only play 14 minutes, even with the power play time. So it would be just Winnipeg 1 for me. Don't mind the Celebrini Toffoli line. The more lineups you make, even with Hellebuck, like, I wouldn't go overboard, but like, that line at that price is fine and I'm at me.
Nothing coming back from San Jose that worries you? Jake Wallman slander on this show in my presence? Wow.
Yeah, okay. Jake Wallman's.
You think you know somebody, and then this happens a week before Christmas, of all things. How could you?
Okay, first of all, I'm Jewish. Second of all, Wallman's just one guy. Like, you're telling me a Barclay Goodrow line scares you defensively?
No, of course not.
I also celebrate Christmas.
Just celebrate them all. Why don't you? I do have a little bit of interest in that San Jose line. So I was looking at the numbers for Celebrini Toffoli with literally anybody but Barclay Goodrow on their line. 3.1 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60. Not only have they been generating a lot of offense, they've been finishing as well. You get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play. It does suck to go up against Connor Hellebuck. That's the one thing I will say. But they are pretty cheap at 13,100. I think if you put them in with San Jose starting goalie, I think it's Georgiev getting the start here tonight. Yeah.
Georgiev.
If you put him in with Georgiev and you go with 2 punt defensemen, you can fit them in with Tampa 1, I think. So just throwing that out there. They've actually been pretty good. I really would have preferred to see Eric Comrie start. That's the one thing that's really holding me back is seeing Connor Hellebuck in net. But that San Jose line has been good with, like I said, with anybody but Barclay Goodrow. So if anything, it would be the Celebrini line. If that doesn't tickle your fancy, then just pass on them. Then yes, this is a Winnipeg 1 matchup. 3.1 goals per 60 and over 400 minutes together this season. They're like, even Gabriel Velarde's been pushing 20 minutes at times since Nikolai Ehlers got hurt. Like, they've just been really leaning on that top line. It is a flow chart matchup, but if you don't want to pay all the way up for Tampa Bay and you want to leave yourself enough money for a reasonable secondary stack, then yeah, it's definitely Winnipeg. And like, it's not like Georgiev is a goalie to be feared. Like, you know, there were a lot of times this season where Mackenzie Blackwood was the difference between San Jose giving up 1 or 2 goals and like 5 or 6 goals. And Whether Georgiev can do that remains to be seen. I have my doubts. I agree with you. I really like Winnipeg one here.
Here's the Georgiev litmus test, right? You can say a lot of things about the Rangers organization. They know how to evaluate goalies, and they traded him. That's all you really need to know about Georgiev. So let's talk a little bit about defensemen. The top of the board is filled with a lot of red. Yossi out, Dahlin out. Top of the board is Werenski, Hamilton, Hedman, Montour, Morrissey, Carlson. Obviously, Josh Morrissey in a great spot at 6,300. Same for Victor Hedman at 6,500. Werenski's a little bit interesting because if Columbus wins, he is most likely going to be heavily involved. I don't think you need to play Werenski with Columbus won. I think he makes for an interesting one-off, but I would much prefer to play Morrissey or Hedman here tonight. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically there's three guys at the top for me. Going by point per dollar for me, it goes Morrissey, Werenski, then Hedman. I think it just depends on how much you want to spend, what you want to do with your lineup. Like I have Morrissey at the top for point per dollar amongst the expensive defensemen. It's basically just because he's like almost $2,000 cheaper than Zach Werenski. Like that's basically the difference. But yeah, Morrissey, Werenski, and Hedman, 1, 2, 3 for me. I think Mackenzie Weegar is also fine, just because the Calgary power play's actually not been bad. There are a lot of guys in that mid-price range I think are worth playing here tonight. Brady Shea, obviously, for Nashville with all those, they're still missing 3 defensemen, including Yossi, Bowen Byram, still running the top power play for Buffalo. He's only 4,300. Brant Clark getting the power play rollback for Los Angeles a couple of games ago was pretty big for him, and he's a guy that can really put up peripherals, and this is a good matchup for peripherals. Pittsburgh is a high-paced team. Jacob Chychrun, again, going up against Washington. Chychrun is a very reasonable price. He actually has more DK points per game than John Carlson this season. So there are a lot of guys in that 4 to 6K price. I think you can throw Charlie McAvoy in there as well. There are a lot of guys in that 4 to 6K price range that are worth playing. If you're looking to pay down, Ryan McDonough is projecting well. Vladislav Gavrikov is projecting well. Dante Fabro, Matt Roy, those guys are all projecting well. Mikey Anderson, if you need a cheaper Los Angeles defenseman. Matthias Samuelsson from Buffalo, just because he's been getting decent minutes recently with Dahlin out. Ivan Provorov, I think, is fine. Hayden Fleury's still getting decent minutes. So there are, Michael Del Gazzo from Nashville. He's not getting as many minutes, but he does put up more peripherals than, some other guys that might be down that price range, like Willsby or whomever. So I think Del Gazzo, if you need a near min punt defenseman, is fine from Nashville here tonight.
Yep. Let's talk about some goalies here. Don't really want to, but we're going to. Spend up options here. Like I know Hellebuck's there at 8,500. Vasilevsky's there at 8,400. I think Kochetkov is fine at 8,200, but really, I don't think I'll be spending up more than Igor Shesterkin at 7,900. I think Decord at 7,800 is in play for sure. Saros at 7,500. I still think you could play Montembeault or Wolf at 7,400. Like the cheap guys here are more interesting to me, like Sorokin at 7,100 against Carolina. Like I know the Islanders might not, there's a good chance they lose this game, but there's also a decent chance that Sorokin sees the saves bonus. So I don't think I'd go below Sorokin here. Like I guess if you need to play a goalie under 7K, like Georgiev is fine. Like any time a goalie's under 7K, it doesn't matter who it is. You can put him in and hope that he sees the saves bonus, but really it's these cheaper guys, and I don't think I'd get above Igor at 7,900.
Yeah, Joey Decord and Igor were the 2 goalies I had. I'll add Jeremy Swayman. Like, I feel like tonight is a litmus test kind of for Swayman. Like, this is a pretty, as far as road matchups go for Boston, this is a pretty good road matchup for him. Like, if he gets lit up here tonight, then I would start to really start having concerns because it's a good matchup against Calgary. So Swayman, Igor, and Decord. For the cheaper goalies, Dustin Wolf, if you don't want to play Swayman, I think at home against Boston, but probably Sorokin against Carolina.
We will be back the rest of the week. We have a massive 5-game slate tomorrow. I say massive because there's a massive $888 GPP on DraftKings. I'm sure there'll be some other stuff as well. We'll be back the rest of the week. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Ollie Oxenfree, Oliver Bjorkstrand.
Nice. We're actually on different teams here today for once. I am going one of my boys, not really one of my sons. He's more like a first cousin in the family tree. I'm going Adrian Kempe.
Okay. I had no idea where you're going with that, so I'm glad you landed that
where I was going with that either. No one knows where I'm going when my mouth opens. So we will be back tomorrow to break down the 5-game slate. Comrie going up against Frostback's Ducks. Looking forward to breaking that down. Not really, but we'll see you tomorrow. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.